Blake T. Wilde here, and welcome to Cover to Cover Comics, where I take a deep dive, really analyze comic books more so than I typically do on my normal video series called What Is. Over on those videos, I just kind of recap comics. I do what I call a read view, where I read through the books while also providing my commentary, my review, my thoughts, little interjections here and there, while also doing cool voiceovers, music, sound effects, stuff like that. Essentially, I'm making a motion comic for free. But here, on Cover to Cover Comics, I am taking books that I think are just interesting, that I love, that I really enjoy, and just want to share with the world and talk about and discuss. And I am showing them off to you in a beautiful overhead camera view. And that is the basic premise. Because I am obsessed with comic books. If you can't tell by this big bookshelf filled to the brim with single issues from independent publishers, Marvel, DC, and then this bookshelf right here, which is filled to the brim as well with trade paperbacks, omnibuses, books, all the sorts. You should see my side of my bed. I have stacks of comics that I am still yet to read. My wife hates it. But I just want to share my love of comics with the world, with the viewers, and just try to get you excited and to look at comics in a different way, in a more thoughtful way, in a way that isn't just reading and looking at the pictures, but to really, analyze the books and really see what goes into making this beautiful medium. And I know what you're thinking, but Blake, you're not a comic creator who's had over 20 years of experience in the industry, and you're right, I'm not. Yet, wink, but I am a comic creator, and I've made my own series called the Custodians, Agents of Cross and Destructo Boy. Each issue of the Custodians, Agents of Cross is over 60 pages of pure comics, written, illustrated, colored, lettered, designed. Everything you see in these books was created entirely by myself. And this asks the all-important question, what if the only heroes that can save the world are an intelligent baboon, a girl who controls fire, the world's smartest man with the power of elasticity only in his right arm, and a four-armed werewolf? And this just follows their exploits. Like I said, it is a love letter to the 60s, Silver Age, and to all of comics in general. As you'll see as the series progresses to its 6th and final issue. This entire first issue, however, is posted in its entirety on my Patreon, patreon.com/Smokey'sVideos, where you can read the entire thing for only $2. But that's not all, because I also have my sci-fi, zany, just crazy fun series, fun for the whole family, all-age comic, Destructo Boy. Destructo Boy follows this little robot guy right here as he lives on a giant space station in the far-flung future, and he battles crime, giant robots, giant monsters, and evil conquerors from space such as Grimlax the Astro Knight. Each of these issues just introduces as much zany sci-fi craziness as I could fit into these books. They're being serialized on my Patreon as I speak as well, and you can pick up all 5 issues on my Etsy shop, blaketwild.etsy.com. Each purchase comes with a free head sketch of any character of your choosing. And with the recent announcements of Transformers and G.I. Joe both being owned by Skybound Entertainment, does that sound right? Or is it just Skybound? I don't know. I haven't read the books. But there is going to be a new upcoming Transformers G.I. Joe crossover. I think I might have the Tom Scioli issue somewhere in here. But that's not what I'm talking about today. And there's also the announcement that there's going to be a Transformers G.I. Joe crossover movie. So I thought, what better time to discuss this weird, strange 80s book than right now. G.I. Rambot from Wonder Color Comics. This is the classic late 80s self-published comic of that era of books. It's really well put together. The colors, I believe, are just extravagant. I love this late 80s style of coloring. It's very poppy. It really just stands out to the eye. And this is just a really great cover that features pretty much nothing that happens in the actual book. But hey, all great covers do. And unfortunately, although they say otherwise, in this book, this is the only issue of G.I. Rambot that Wonder Color Comics ever published. And anyone ever published. Never had a sequel. But I really think it should, because it's a really fun premise of a comic. So if whoever owns G.I. Rambot wants to sell it to me at a decent price, let me know. My email is somewhere on my YouTube channel. But going right into this, we get the G.I. Rambot splash page. Script by Kevin Huare? I'm not quite sure how to pronounce it. Juaire. I couldn't find much about Kevin. I don't believe he ever really wrote anything after maybe like the 80s or 90s in comics. He did 2 books or 2 stories from DC, and those seem to be more anthology stories. I don't know if he ever did anything at Marvel, but he did a fair amount of books from Wonder Color Comics, but I don't think he ever continued a career in the comic field. Unlike Tom Lyle, the artist of this issue, who went on to work at both DC and Marvel extensively. Tom Lyle, who unfortunately just passed away a couple years ago, he, you might know him from the Robin standalone series that was published, when was that, early 90s or so, with the Tim Drake era of Robin. I covered the first volume on my channel as well, so check that out. I believe he did the 2 follow-up series on art as well for those. What else did he do? He did some work. He did a lot of Spider-Man, a lot of Punisher. I think he was around the time of Maximum Carnage as well. So, Tom Lyle is really the standout guy of this issue. He's the one who just full throttle continued going. At this point, all these people are just making comics. And this is just, I absolutely, the coloring is, I think, my favorite part about this book, especially this splash image of this, World War I era soldier right here. It's just something about, I don't know what these colors would be that they're using. It's, I don't know if it's like Doc Martin Dyes or whatever the company was that how they're painting these on, or how they're coloring these, or what this method is. You'll see it a lot in late 80s comics, independent comics, is that a lot of them are colored similar to this. It almost looks like, it's almost like a marker, sort of texture and quality to it. But it's so fascinating to look at. It's so vibrant, and just, I really love that fact that it's that vibrancy of it. It really makes it stand out. But this is just a setup. This is a really strong anti-war comic, and that comes across pretty evidently, even though our main character is a Rambo-esque, sort of almost also Punisher-esque character who, once he is like shipped off and is like forced to just work on a base rather than fighting in the war, he has no true purpose. So he's very gung-ho about getting back into the fight. But everything else, it's not written in a way that we should be rooting for him necessarily, but it is written in a way that it's clear that it's not expressly the purpose of this story to glorify war in any way. It's very much, this is who this character is. You don't have to like him. It's just a neat sort of idea for just this insane Transformer G.I. Joe kind of knockoff story. But this is setting up the history of this world that we're living in, which is just a violent one. It's set seemingly in the 2050s, 2060s by the time that we're done with this sort of recap. This is our main character, Randolph Ram Stewart, who, there's the narration which goes, War is a reality, whether or not you change the name to political action or aid to a rebellion, and there are those willing to fight and put their lives on the line. If they believe their cause is just, and they're willing to take a life as well. If you do this well, you... Wait, what? If they believe their cause is just, they're willing to take a life as well. If you do this well, you are known as a hero. Randolph Ram Stewart is such a man. But he knows hero means killer. And that is his reality. He willingly accepts this because he is on equal terms with those that die at his hands. It is the ultimate intimacy. It is his art. He does not take a single life without that man first seeing into his eyes and knowing he cared enough about something to kill. Does that not sound like it could just be taken directly from like a Punisher story? But that is who this guy is. And then this is just a fantastic page. I'm going to read this to you as well because it is just these 2 pages right here. First of all, a beautiful illustration by Tom Lyle. Great color work as well. But this dialogue I'm going to read to you. It's prescient in what it's depicting. Perhaps his is the perfect way. Many could not look at a man and still kill him. Perhaps then they would go home. Instead, they find an easier way, a bigger and better way. To defend their cause, they develop the means to fight forever if necessary. And I love this panel, or this page as well, because it begins with foot infantry and fairly classic warfare. There's a attack helicopter, soldier ground infantry moving in, and then it starts to get more advanced. The technology changes, and then we get these strange walking machines, and it's becoming more mechanized. There's still a couple of soldiers here and there, and then eventually it's just totally replaced with drones and machinery. Now there is no one to hurt, to bleed, to die. Now there is no one to care. So it's just, like I said, it's where we're seemingly at now. If you're at all familiar with any conflict going on in the world, drones are a heavy sort of next step into the just horror of warfare. But in this reality, it's just so completely, totally mechanized. And then again, we cut just halfway across the world. There is this is the command room. These are all the drone operators in essence, the generals looking at maps. The USSR is still a thing, of course. But the caption narration continues. The war goes on, possibly because it is something at which we are good. Good enough to put the missiles away, and we know we can get better. Someday someone will be the best. Maybe it's true. Everybody does want to rule the world. Nice little Tears for Fears reference. And again, I can't speak about how much I enjoy this coloring enough. Usually I'm not a big fan of, this much sort of these adjustments that are being made. I'll get closer for you. This looks like Peter Parker, kind of, but the colors just does an excellent job here of really just adding this depth to the character to really emphasize. I just realized I haven't looked at this before. This is Steve Ditko. That's why it looks like Peter Parker, because Tom Lyle drew Peter Parker and named him S. Ditko on the page. How's about that? But just that capturing that light just shining against this officer's face, Officer Ditko. Just excellent work from the colorist. And now we are in the present where Ram is, he's old news. The war is no longer fought by people. It's just these men and women in command stations around the world just operating these machines and keeping, punching numbers, keeping track of everything. And he's relegated to lifting crates and working in a warehouse with this snotty commanding officer that he has to deal with. And eventually one of the crates falls over and gets opened up, and he orders him to, scrub the floor until I can eat off of it. That kind of ordeal. And later, when this guy comes looking for Ram, he can't find him anywhere, but he does find this classified top secret crate opened with a broom in it for some reason. And cut to Korea, apparently. Ram has flotillaed his way all the way to Korea, the peninsula of Korea, which we are told is where his great-grandfather died during the Korean War. And, let's see. They say here, more than a century later, Ram is here, and they're at it again. So, this is, like I said, it's more than a century, so late 2050s, early 2060s at least, which is a fun idea because we're closer to that occurring than when this book came out, and the reality of the world being that war is now fought with these machines is becoming closer and closer to reality. And I love this caption, which is, theoretically, this is a country. Technically, it's Zone K 1872, or 7Z. And this is where the whole G.I. Joe aspect, I think, of it comes in, which is, it's just these crazy sci-fi machines just destroying each other. This reporter is giving a tour, by the battalion leader or whatever for the operators as they're working in the field. And of course, they're still fighting the Russians. And I love this kind of forethought into what would really happen if, drones and war, machine war like this is, the Russians have cut into our signal again. Our bots are responding erratically. We better pull back. It's going to be a complete loss. So, that kind of satellite reworking, cutting out signals is really, that's a realistic idea of where this would take us. And it's another reality that we're coming to. But then this is just a beautiful panel right here of a Ram Stewart walking through the dusk. I love how Tom Lyle illustrates this sort of like sketchy lines around the sun. It emphasizes a non-organic sort of experience and just an inorganic way of depicting the sun through this haze of just utter destruction. Like, we're supposed to be in Korea, and it's a desolate waste field full of wreckage and salvage and ruin and just burning machines. They never say what the war they're fighting is, why they're fighting a war. It's just, they exist and we don't want them to exist. We exist and they don't want us to exist. Well, let's fight. And then they realize that a man is now entering the battlefield, and it is Rod with his giant... that just looks like a G.I. Joe gun, right? Like, it has just this giant bullet belt fed thing hanging off of it. This giant... I don't even... what is this even? It's some sort of anti-tank, anti-armor device, I guess? That's the only thing that would really make sense. Is just based on the heft of it. It's like a modified M16 with all these just crazy shit going on. We get a better look of it right here. Like, it looks like it fires rockets or something. But they're like, what the fuck is he doing? There's a guy out there. And the colonel is like, we seem to be experiencing some communications. Let's get you out of here. And the reporter's like, fuck off. This is an actual story. This isn't just a fucking, a puff piece about our endless goddamn war. And just, oh my god, beautiful page right here. It looks like Sergeant Rock. Sergeant Rock is like, okay, here's the thing. is that when I was a kid, you know how they kind of, there's like that stereotype, there's that joke where when men reach like their middle age, they suddenly become obsessed with either cars or motorcycles or World War II. I I seemingly went through that kind of midlife crisis of being obsessed with World War II when I was about 8 to 10, around that era of age, maybe a little younger, maybe a little older, I can't remember. But I was obsessed with World War II. My great grandfather fought in World War II, so my grandmother had plenty of stories to tell me about his experiences. I own a bunch of World War II memorabilia, and I was really into Sergeant Rock when I discovered it. I have a bunch of comics right down there about Sergeant Rock, actually. And so that is like, except for the Toy Biz in the early 2000s, Toy Biz would release, they would have comics packed in with their action figures. Because I didn't know about comic book stores, or the one comic book store, or the store in town that would sell comics as well as movies and all this other stuff, like a pop culture kind of store. I didn't know that existed in there. I only knew about comics from this one comic book store in California that we would visit occasionally, Toy Biz, and then Sergeant Rock. I learned about Sergeant Rock. I learned that it was a World War II based comic, and I was like, I need these! So, whenever we would go to that comic book store on like vacation, we would stop by on our way in. It was comics and stuff in El Cajon. Great shop, wide variety of stuff, a little overpriced, but I'd highly recommend it if you're in the area. I would go in there, I would see just hundreds of thousands of other comics, and just go, all right, where's Sergeant Rock at? I want Sergeant Rock. But looking at this page, it's so clearly inspired by Sergeant Rock. He's wearing the helmet, which is a similar rank to, he is a sergeant, I believe. He has the cut-off sleeve vest, the bandolier of bullets. It's the next generation of Sergeant Rock, which is just Tom Wilde just does a fucking great job of depicting this man just destroying these machines. And I love that we don't see any of what he is looking at, which is a great thing, because there's that whole monologue at the beginning about how he looks into the man's eyes before he kills him. But he can't do that with just these fucking tanks and like the walkers and just these machines. So there's really no point into showing just absurd destruction of these robots and the drones that he's destroying. So it's a great method of really emphasizing Ram in this particular scene. And so they sort of realize that seemingly the robot's sensors aren't picking him up because he's too small of a target, and it's been years since there's been an actual like infantry sort of combat going on, so there's really no point to making sensors that would pick up something like a man on the field, because there haven't been for decades or however long this war has been going on. But as he's walking away, I'm not sure really what is occurring here, because he destroys this tank and then he like kicks, I don't know what this is supposed to be, if this is the barrel or something. I guess it is, because we sort of get like it's kind of turned this way, but like he kicks the barrel slant, so I guess the bullet springs out and it hits the back of his helmet and knocks him unconscious. Or he is just, like, when I first read it, I was like, oh my god, is there like, did he get shot by like a robot, or is there somebody else that went out onto the field and shot him or something? It's never explained. But he goes under and he wakes up literally chained to a hospital bed. You know, normally you'd think if this would happen that he would, you know, they'd have like an actual, like this, like the thing's going around his legs. Instead, they do the straps around his legs and then literally chain him with chain link like he's a werewolf. But he is all the rage. People fucking somehow they got this photo of him. And General Brewster is here, who is like, oh, you got the fucking government breathing down my neck, man. What the fuck are you doing, dude? Why did you do that? You went AWOL, you stole a piece of military equipment that's classified, like experimental machinery that wasn't supposed to go out. And here's another like little Ditko-ism, is this dude's hair. You might not be able to see it, but he has these sort of cornrows that Norman Osborn has. And then this is just sort of a little bit of nonsense happening here. This is where they're talking about, oh, this is where the letter column's going to be, but since it's the first issue, the company asked the writer, Kevin, to just sort of write a little write-up about the comic and whatnot, and it really doesn't offer much. And the color gets a little hectic here. Like, you know, there's not much going on, so clearly it's just, it's the colorist, what's his name? Tom Vincent, just trying to up the excitement value of just these two dudes talking in a hospital room. And then, of course, we cut to Wexley Industries, the largest supplier of weapons to the U.S. military. Wexley Industries, the #1 corporation on the New York Stock Exchange. Wexley Industries, corporate slogan, serving the needs of freedom. Translation, where would we be without war? And this is where the Transformers bit of it comes up. He does note, I should say, that this was originally going to be called G.I. Robot, and then they changed it to G.I. Rambot, which is a neat title. And I really dig the logo. And they basically said, where was it? Except for the fact that the series had to have a robot, David Campiti, the editor and like guy in charge of the comic company Wonder, told Kevin, the writer, that he could do pretty much whatever else he wanted to do. Write your anti-war story as long as it has a big fucking robot. And boy does it! Look at this. This is, I think, the only double-page splash in this whole book. It's not the best. It really isn't. It's very static. It's a good... Don't get me wrong. It's a very nicely done composition, because it really... It shows off that this is just... like, you can't really tell how big it is in comparison, like, because everyone's on the same plane right here. So, like, do humans only go up to his knees, or is it like several stories tall? I do like the angle that it's at, of how it is shining through, and the fact that the colorist went with these dark blues and teals really makes everything, you know, in the foreground just pop, especially this silver and red robot, and the highlights just work really well. It almost looks like it's airbrushed kind of coloring, and it's the only thing on it. Really emphasizes the fact that this is a machine, because it's the only character on this page that has that kind of color treatment done to it. G.I. Rambot is how he is introduced to this robot. I feel like this could have been done. It could have been done far more dynamically than how it came out. But it's still a great little double-page splash. I'd love to have... that would be so cool to own these original art pages. God, I wonder what happened to those. But here comes the Transformers bit, which happens very briefly, because as you can tell, we are reaching the end of this issue. So the general calls... General Brewster, don't forget, calls the press agents over to begin the sort of enactment. And I really like this dialogue. The reporter that we saw at the beginning, she says, you know, the scientist and the general are explaining, behind me is the most sophisticated fighting machine ever developed, even more so when we utilize the human factor. Randy Stewart and the robot will work as a team. It's almost like it's kind of Pacific Rim in that way, if Pacific Rim was like one dude, I guess. And then the reporter says, From what I've seen, you should give John Wayne here a pair of 6-shooters and just set him loose. Then this dumb little panel, which doesn't need to exist, goes, not bad. Lose the glasses and she's got real potential. Come on. What the fuck is that? Why was that necessary in this book? It's not. Hey, ladies, if you have eyeglasses, don't sweat it. They look great on you. Same goes for you two fellas, or any person on the gender spectrum. You look good with glasses. Yeah, that could just easily be cut out. You don't need that. You can just go from here to here. But I really love this line from the scientist who says, yes, but even John Wayne had his horse. Like, that is just such a, like, 80s action, like, setup line. I think that it's just it's a clever dialogue. And then we get to the transformation part. G.I. Rambot, Land Rover. G.I. Rambot, Jet Fighter. And in here we see, again, the sort of discrepancy between the sizes of this robot. So they are a bit closer. They go up to about his shin. And then we get this little thing right here, which I remember reading this the first time and be like, oh, God, no. Because they say it'll take 2 years of training before we can put the unit into the field. And then they give him the manual. Cut to later that night. He ain't reading no fucking manual. He breaks out, karate chop, kicks his way through, and then uses... this is a great little way to sort of signify the fact that this machine is reading his, like, his iris biometric sort of thing. Another, futuristic sort of prescient idea. And then he heads on in where the robot has... It's the exact same pose, so he kind of referenced himself, but it changed a little bit. He heads on in. And he steals the fucking machine. He steals the Rambot. And I love this, because this dude's just such a fucking blowhard. He's such a gung-ho idiot. They explode out, and he goes, oh shit, maybe I should have finished the manual. Where the hell's the index? They sick the actual manned Air Force after him, but they're okay because they escape via parachutes. And neat little sort of Deathlock looking helmet that he puts on as well, which, where the fuck does that come from, by the way, since this is transforming into a giant robot? A fun little fight sequence here where we get I really enjoy these 4 panels as well, because it has some sort of, like, you can picture this in like a film where they're fighting in the distance and then they get closer and then whoosh, he flies off into the night. I was like, this fucking, the Rambot is making a hard right 90-degree turn right here. And then they fight and he blows them up and escapes the country. And somewhere in Siberia, at some long-abandoned military base, he readies himself to, be a vigilante Rambot dude. Where could this have possibly gone at this point? Like, what do you do after this? Because this is the last page. That's how the book ends, guys, is Ram looking at the Rambot. So where could you have possibly gone that isn't, like when you see the premise, you see the cover, you're like, oh shit, he's gonna be like the ace pilot of this robot fighter for the military, and they're gonna be fighting the USSR, or like eventually you can add some sort of clandestine or group that might be snake themed, or have some evil sort of deceptive robots that come in. But no, he just goes AWOL again, and I guess he's gonna fight the war himself as a third party? Like, is that really where you're going with this? That just... So much of this story, until these final couple pages where he escapes, could have been so well done. Like, it just sets up such an intriguing idea, such a great idea for a story, because it's literally just What if G.I. Joe was teaming up with a Transformer? And let's see what happens. But they don't get there. Like I said, this is the only issue ever released. And instead, they make him a vigilante. They make him it's like when the Punisher stole Iron Man's armor. Like, okay, I guess we're gonna see Rambot and Ram fight the USSR robots. Or, like, I don't even know. Like, because that's all that's been established. And if you had kept him in the military, there's so much more you could have done. You could have had espionage. You could have had, oh, General Brewster is really a double agent. You know, there's some sort of nuclear war conspiracy theories going on. Maybe the robots are trying to take over. You could have done Terminator. You could have done Terminator. But no, they don't do anything interesting with this premise. There's like, why would you really want to read after this, assuming that there are more issues? Because this setup for the rest of the series, it just goes nowhere. Maybe that's why there's only one issue, because they couldn't think of where to take the fucking story. Or more likely, this Wonder Comics just went through, fell under. That concludes this episode. If you enjoyed, let me know. Make sure you like and subscribe for more content just like this. Again, let me know what you thought of G.I. Rambot in the comments below. Would you have picked this up if you saw it? What if you saw it on as an actual series rather than one failed issue? What are your thoughts on the Skybound Transformers and G.I. Joe upcoming series? I know the Transformers one is supposed to be really good. I've yet to check it out myself. The only Transformers comics I think I've read are a couple of the old ones, and then the Marvel UK reprints. As always, follow me on Instagram at @NotBlakeWilde for updates on my art, just posts on there. Whenever I'm feeling like posting, it's usually updates about the channel or my videos and artwork and comics. Check out my Patreon, patreon.com/Smokey'sVideos, where you can check out Destructo Boy and the Custodians Agents of Cross, where I am serializing each issue weekly, so you get new pages of the Custodians. Issue 2, Issue 1, all 60+ pages have been fully posted on there. And Destructo Boy is now on issue 4. I just finished issue 3 this past week, so you can check that out as well. For as little as $2, you get access to over 60 full-on pages of pure comics, plus all the pages that are coming out from issue 2. And you get access to, like I said, all of Destructo Boy. You get access to my movie commentaries. I recently just rewatched X-Men Origins Wolverine, and it's not as bad as you remember. I also post original art on there, early access to videos when available, behind-the-scenes stuff for my work and as I'm creating the Custodians Agents of Cross. So check that out. It really helps me out. And also my Etsy shop, blaketwilde.etsy.com. And again, yeah, let me know what you thought, and I will see you next time when I go cover to cover. Bye.